Wukusu, Peace, Black Power, and welcome to Harlem Liberation School's YouTube channel. Harlem Liberation School is a black nationalist, Pan-African community organization based in Harlem. We provide relevant and credible political education to help black people wake up, clean up, and stand up, in the words of Brother Malcolm X. To do this, we provide panel discussions, political commentary, mini documentaries, leadership tips, classes, and interviews with some of our most dedicated and effective leaders, activists, and intellectuals around the world. The concept of Wukusu is very important to us and central to our mission. It is our greeting, our motto, and our guiding philosophy. Wukusu is an acronym for the phrase,
Wake up, clean up, stand up.
Wake up means developing black nationalist and Pan-African consciousness. Clean up tells us to identify and eliminate our self-defeating behavior that gets in the way of us being our highest selves. Stand up compels us to use our gifts and our resources to exert leadership in our communities to help liberate our people. We humbly ask you to subscribe to our channel so we can reach more people. We encourage you to like, share, and comment on our videos, and we invite you to donate to our work either through sending us a super chat here on YouTube or by sending donations through Cash App to $TRUSELF143. Now, let's build. Peace and Black Power families, Brother Ajay Taimba from Harlem Liberation School, where we teach black people to wake up, clean up, and stand up. You know the routine. We are back again with another installment of our community empowerment series, in which really the goal is to really kind of completely erase and demolish this narrative that black women are somehow to be scapegoated for every problem that exists in the black community. We know that if anything, black women are imperfect, as we are as brothers, but they hold down the church and the mosque, they hold down the homes, they hold down the schools and the community centers. So we want to give them their proper due. And as you know, for the past 2 months, we've been highlighting some really powerful black women that are really pouring a lot of love and service into our community. And we want to, I guess you could say, give them their flowers while they're alive. We want to tell them to their face that we love them, we respect them, and we value them. And we want you to know more about them. So that's why we're honoring them through these live interviews, so you can see who we're talking about and you can get to know more about them and the work they do, and maybe even support them in various ways. With that said, we have a really powerful sister right here, family, that I have known for about maybe a little more than 20 years, something like that. And I do want to say this, I have to give a disclaimer. The Board of Education in New York City has some rules about how we, do interviews, stuff that they kind of don't want you to get into. And so to avoid all of that, we're not going to make references to the specific name of the school and things of that nature, right? So in case you're wondering, why aren't they saying the school's name? That's why. We want to make sure that we're talking about really more about Ms. Warren and not so much her specific work environment. So the questions are going to be tailored in that way. We have a sister. I used to call her Miss Sheri Warren, but now, family, we got to call her Dr. Sheri Warren because she recently earned her doctorate degree. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. This is a sister that comes from the Boogie Down Bronx, born and raised, and has become an educator, an educational leader, someone who I've seen at work, leading schools, providing really excellent service, taking the positions that needed to be taken, providing the leadership that needed to be given. And it's very easy for people to criticize leaders and leadership, man. Very easy to be on the sidelines. They don't understand why you did this, why you do this. Leaders think differently. Leaders have to look at things differently because they're in charge of managing people and property and resources. So while you're a worker, you're looking at things in one dimension, the leader's looking at everything, all the working parts. And sometimes we don't understand the tremendous burden and that it takes to be a leader. Now, when you're a principal like Ms. Warren, then you're accountable to the students, the teachers, the staff, the parents, and you even have people in your school district, right? So it's not a job for the thin-skinned or the internally weak, that's for sure. But I know this sister is very. I always respected her leadership, her decision making, how she holds people accountable, and her dedication to Black youth and Brown youth, and her willingness to stand in defense of our youth and provide our youth with the best service possible. I always said, if you're a parent, an educator, or anybody else that allows your youth to fail, you can't say you love them. If you love people, you give them the best. Even when they don't quite want to hear it and don't want it, you give them the best. That's a great demonstration of your love for them. You're pushing them to be their best. So, without further ado, you're gonna learn more about our sister. I want to bring on Dr. Sheri Warren. Ms. Warren, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you, Brother RJ, for inviting me today.
No doubt, no doubt. Good to see you. And
Nice.
I know that you are happy that graduation and prom are over, aren't you?
Yes, it's bittersweet. June is a rough month for us, but we roll right into the summer. There is no break, so it's bittersweet. You have a class going out, but you have a new class coming in. So, what's fortunate about us, our children don't leave us; they stay with us all the time. So we constantly see them, even after they leave us, well into their college and adult years. So, it's good in that sense. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the break. So is everyone else.
I know that's right, especially with this heat wave. I know you're trying to cool out, literally and
Yes.
physically. Let me put a few things up so people know what we're talking about. Community Empowerment Series featuring Dr. Sheri Warren. I want to remind everyone to please subscribe. That's a ticker going on the bottom. Like, share, and subscribe. And I want to kind of get right into it. I know Ms. Warren is busy, got a lot of things she wants to do. So I want to get really started with this. I'm hoping that a lot of people who watch this, Ms. Warren, watch from different parts of the world, actually.
Okay.
If not live, the recorded versions. And they don't know when we say Bronx and Harlem in the 80s, they don't really know what that's about. I was hoping you could describe for our viewers, since you were born in the Bronx, what was the Bronx like in the 80s and how growing up in the Bronx may have influenced or impacted you in different ways? Excuse me.
So when I saw the question, it made me think of a tale of two cities. And
Mm,
what I mean by that is what immediately came to my mind of the 80s, I thought of the gas lines. There was a shortage of gas in the late 70s, early 80s. And I remember that people had specific days where they could purchase gas, and the lines would be so long. And people would argue, and there were fights and melees breaking out because of the gas shortage and the increase in the prices. I also thought about Jimmy Carter, the former
mm,
president of the United States, because at that time, in the late 70s, early 80s, I was living in the South Bronx, a section off Boston Road. And Jimmy Carter actually, when he came to the Bronx, that's the area of the Bronx that he visited. And at that time, it was just blocks and blocks of tenements, but they were burnt out, and there would be stray dogs everywhere. And as a result of his visit, he started this initiative to build low affordable housing. People could purchase homes, and those homes are still there today on Boston Road. They're very, very well maintained, beautiful. But prior to them being there, it was just all tenements, everything burnt out, always a fire. So here we go with that Bronx is burning. That is like literally what was going on. The landowners and the owners of the building, for the most part, were Jewish people who intentionally paid people to set mattresses and other items on fire so that they could get the insurance money. So the borough was mired in poverty, especially this section of the Bronx. It was mired in filth and neglect and despair, for the benefit of profit. Um, at that point, you would see gangs in the late 70s and the early 80s every now and then. And those were some of the things that really stood out to me on one end of this scale. But then on the other end, what I clearly remember is good music. Music that, the music would bring us out in the summertime, block parties, and you always had some good disco, some good R&B, and it was used as a source for us to to be happy and find joy. I also remember, back then there was a communal raising of children. Everybody looked out for everybody. At one point, we lived in the projects, forest projects, right off of Boston Road, and our neighbors, we lived on the fourth floor in the building, and our neighbors all looked out. I remember to my right, there was a lady who had two daughters who were older than I was. They were teenagers at that time. And, we got locked out the house. My mother said, well, go next door. Or I could go across the hall to my other neighbors, or I could go to the other neighbors that lived on the other side of the elevators. And there was a communal raising of children. And people could, if they saw you in the street and you were doing something or behaving in a way that you were not supposed to be behaving, they could reprimand you and they would tell your parents. And nobody would get cursed out. One curse out the next parent. They'd be like, what? You saw my kid doing what? And you know that it was going down. There was just a communal accountability and understanding that we're all in this together and we're all going to raise our children together and we have to watch out for each other. In terms of that juxtaposition, there was, children went outside to play. We played. I mean, we would play up from sun up to sundown outside, all kinds of ring allevias, steal the bacons, kick the
That's
can.
right.
And so in the midst of economic crisis, in the midst of poverty, in the midst of despair, there are these wondrous stories of hope that people our age can remember, because in spite of those things, we found joy, we found ways to grow and thrive. There was a common belief in education. Even if you saw young people who were a little bit older than you, they would always say, let me see your report card. You better stay good and do good in school, even though that might not have been what they were doing at the time. But they understood that, listen, don't go this way, and they would share that collective wisdom with you. So those are some of the starkest memories I have of the 80s.
That's an excellent breakdown, Ms. Warren. You had me thinking back. I used to try to get over to some of the jams when I got a
Oh
little
yeah.
older, like maybe around high school in the Bronx. And she's right; it looked like somebody had threw a bomb. And places in Harlem look like that too, bricks, and they say broken glass everywhere, right? In the message, that's a real sort of description, and yet a beautiful genre called hip hop comes out of that, right? So sometimes through some of the greatest tragedy, we produce some of our greatest art, right? And warriors come out of struggle. So now, you you've been a middle school teacher and or administrator for some time, but there was a time when you were a middle school student yourself, and I'm curious to know what your experiences were in middle school. Were they favorable? Were they negative? And how did your experience as a middle school student influence you as a teacher and the principal?
So I went to a K-8 Catholic school. Um, so I didn't go to a school that was like a dedicated, what you would call a dedicated junior high school. But in that Catholic school, they separated the middle schoolers from the K-5 component. And when I reflect on it, in terms of academics, I will say that I got a good education. They made sure that we had that foundational learning, and then, the enrichment that came along with it. And I was a really, really good student in middle school. So, in terms of academics, I will say that, that I had a solid a solid start in terms of that education journey. While I was in middle school, I was able to participate in the Catholic Youth Organization, what we call CYO. So I ran track from grade 6 to 8. I was a sprinter. We had music in our school. We had music classes, I believe, once or twice a week. And we would learn how to play like the recorder and do some basic drumming. But one of the things through the music classes was that we learned how to basically we learned about music in the context of being able to put on big shows at the end of the year. So even though it was a Catholic school, the arts were embedded into the curriculum. Um, um, I also, that we had, science, things like that you see standard in school. We had the science projects and social studies projects and things of that nature. So in terms of academics and sports and the arts, I did have experience with those. Now, they might not have been as robust as some institutions that have a lot of funding, but you know what? If you were interested in those areas and you wanted to pursue them, you did have an opportunity to do so. Um, One thing that two things that stand out about in terms of the negative experiences were that, in a Catholic school, you didn't learn much about Black people. So by the time I got to seventh and eighth grade, and we had to take religion class and social studies classes, and there was a point where they made me like the monitor. They didn't want me in those classes, and I clearly remember there being a conversation in religion class about Mary, Jesus's mom, and her having free choice, free will, which is a big thing in Catholicism. And I wasn't Catholic. So let me say that. I went to an AME church sometimes with my aunt on Sundays, but I wasn't Catholic. And I know there was a big debate because I argued with the teacher, how could Mary have free will if God chose her? She was born without original sin. That means she didn't have free will. And they didn't like that. They did not like that. I remember another debate. I learned that because I was an avid reader, still am. I learned they told us that the Emancipation Proclamation, Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves through the Emancipation Proclamation. But I had read it, and I said, no, he didn't. No, no, no. This is 13th Amendment over here. And so as I got older, in that same Catholic school that I had gone through for first grade, they started to view me in a different way once I was in seventh grade. And then they found convenient ways for me to be the monitor of this and this, student leader of that. And they conveniently found ways to kind of draw me out of those classes. So that I wouldn't. And now as an adult, I realized that what I was doing was disrupting a narrative that they didn't want disrupted. Um, but I stood my ground. I did not cave on that. So, also, I realized something that's done now with middle schools is that, or schools in general, is that we have to provide a lot of services for children. And that didn't happen when I was a kid. Like there were times when, children, including myself and my brother, you might not have had the necessities to get through the day or to get through the month. And there really weren't there weren't any supports in the school to address those things. What happens if you're clothing insecure or food insecure? Those things weren't addressed. So I look at that as something that was not good at that time, especially in a school that is religiously affiliated, and one of their core tenets is service and charity. However, I didn't see a lot of service and charity in that way that manifested itself through the school or through the parish. So, that's one thing that in retrospect, I feel was a negative experience. The other thing I wanted to say, like, I want to just circle back about learning about Black people in our history. That was not done in the school. And how I got introduced to our people was actually through a neighbor. Um, we had a Rastafarian who was a neighbor. He was older than me. I was maybe 10, 11, and he might have been maybe about 19, 20. And I remember it was the last day of school, and he asked all the kids for us to show us our report cards. And I showed him my report card, and my report card had grades over 100 on it because I was that child that I did the extra credit. I did all the bonus. I wanted every point that I could possibly get on any exam or project. And he's like, he couldn't believe that my grades were so high. And he went into his house and he came out with two books. One of them was The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. And the other one was, it was No, it was three actually. It was the autobiography of Malcolm X, and then it was a book by Elijah Muhammad.
Message to the Black Man in
Message to
America.
the Yes, yes, that's what he gave me, those three books, and I was all of 10 or 11 years old,
Wow.
and I read each and every one of them. And in retrospect, I didn't understand some of what was going on, and I remember that The Bluest Eye made me so sad. It made me so sad, and I needed guidance reading that book. However, um, I appreciated the fact that he saw something in me, and he tapped into the fact that I love to read and gave me those three books, because those three books anchored me. And I do think that they had an impact in what happened and how I questioned the teachers as I, matriculated through that school.
Mm-hmm. It's really good. Now, for those of you who just tuned in, this is Harlem Liberation School online. Our guest today is Dr. Sheri Warren. You know that we're finishing up this month our community empowerment series, in which we highlight, show love to, and introduce you to some powerful Black women who are alive right now doing wonderful work. And so in case you didn't know that, that's what we're doing. We want to remind you, please, to subscribe, like, share the video. Don't keep all this goodness to yourself. Share it with the community, family. All right. Now, Dr. Warren, you attended Howard University. Now, you know, we love Howard in the Black
That's
community.
right. HU.
We love Howard, the Bisons, right? And it's one of our beloved and most acclaimed Black colleges. I mean, you got so many, the list of people who come out of Howard. The brother Chadwick Boseman, who played Black Panther, Toni Morrison, yourself, Ras Baraka, the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, who I think you may have known. There's just so many people, right? Could you describe, for those who aren't familiar with that experience, who might be watching, who might be deciding if they want to go to a historically Black college, could you describe what your experience was like at Howard? And also, do you support Black students attending HBCUs today?
So I would say my experience at Howard was phenomenal. When I first arrived on the campus, I went into culture shock for a little while, because I did not understand the concept of that there were wealthy Black people. I didn't really understand that. And I mean, really wealthy. I didn't understand or realize that my professors, you know, would be on, maybe something like NBC Nightly News or 60 Minutes, especially the political science professors, because that's one of the powerhouse majors at Howard. And so I knew I wanted to go to Howard from when I was very, very young. And I believe it was because I saw an advertisement when I was about 7 or 8 years old. And I didn't know anything about the university, but something was ingrained in my soul that said you have to go there, regardless of whether or not I had the money, because I sure enough didn't, and my family did. And regardless of what was going on, I knew I had to attend this university. When I was accepted, they notified me very, very late, and I didn't hear from them, and it was already June. And I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to go to NYU because I haven't heard from Howard. And I went to NYU's orientation. I did registration and all that stuff. And there was one day in June, I finally got the letter that said I was accepted. And I was like, I'm out of here. No money, broke. And I said, I worked a little summer job. I had $200 in my pocket. I had one suitcase for clothes in it. I didn't have much because I didn't come from a wealthy family, or what people call a middle class family. So, it was a struggle. And but when I got there, I was in culture shock because I did not realize that Black people, that we existed in all these different ways. I had a very monolithic thinking about Black people, and that monolithic thinking was everybody's like the people on my block, and we all had this common struggles growing up. So my assumption was like, that's the way we live as a people. So when I got to the university and realized classism, like I was hit in the face with that. And I was like, oh, so it was a big learning curve. But my experience there was phenomenal in terms of the education, because, like I said, political science, I was a political science major and a Spanish minor. And the political science department is a powerhouse at Howard. It undergirds, a lot of the, most of, if not all of the civil rights legislation. You had Charles Hamilton Houston, you have Thurgood Marshall,
Brilliant.
you have
Brilliant
all
there.
these folks who, worked, so hard for the betterment of our community. And that was the department in which I decided to study. So academically, when I tell you I learned a lot, I mean, I was like a sponge, because I just didn't know that there was just all of this information out there. And I was in this department that spearheaded a lot. And then also, you know, um, at that point at Howard, you know, it was just ripe with all kinds of activism, and I tapped into that very early. You mentioned Mayor Raz Baraka. We were very close at that time at Howard. We were student leaders and student activists together, in, organizations together. We led the 1989 Howard University protests together. We were instrumental in uh, uh, um, implementing the hip hop conference at Howard. All of that work was done while we were at Howard. So, you know, not only did it give me a good education, but it also helped me understand my work as it relates to our people, and that to lean into it, and not to be afraid, and to understand the fact that we must lift as we climb and we stand on the shoulders of others. So all of that was deeply ingrained in me while I was there. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't want people to think I didn't have fun, because I had a whole lot of fun when I was there as well. But I had a clear understanding of what my mission was, my personal mission, but also my mission to our community, and how that the seeds were planted there. And then how, thinking now, how I carried that, later on through my profession as an educator. Do I support Black students attending HBCUs? 100%. I stand 10 toes down on that. And the reason being, and I always like to remind people, when other folks did not want us to go to their schools, where did we go? Who educated us? We educated ourselves. We built our institutions. Mary McLeod Bethune was on the side of the road selling pies and cakes to start out Bethune-Cookman University. So, our AME churches, our Baptist churches were instrumental in establishing many of the HBCUs. And we should always understand that we have the ability to educate ourselves and educate ourselves well.
That's
Almost
right.
all of our doctors, our lawyers, our engineers, our architects, our scientists, all of these folks, these legacies, they went to HBCUs, and many times because they had no other place to go. So, we have to be mindful of when we say, the Ivy Leagues are the best and the HBCUs are this and that. No, let's not fall into um let's not fall into that false narrative. We have to understand, without the HBCUs, many of the things that we have today, we would not have them. So there is brilliance there. Brilliance continues to be at all the HBCUs. And we have to understand that, I will always believe this, that when we are given or take the power to educate ourselves, we do better. When we start listening to other folks and how we should learn, learning is cultural. It's not just, hey, come to school and learn. When we
That's
start to
right.
adopt practices that are in direct opposition to the way we are raised culturally, and then we sit here and understand, well, why the children can't learn? Because you're teaching me in a way that is not the way of our ancestors. So we start to deviate from things that have held true to us and that have sustained us. And then we wonder now why the children can't read. The children can't read because somebody said don't teach phonics. And many of us bought into that nonsense. The children can't multiply because somebody said, oh, no, they don't have to learn their multiplication tables. Absolutely, you do. So, I definitely support HBCUs. I support Howard, but I also support all of the HBCUs. And what our goal is to, find the one, what I recommend to students is to find the HBCU that is the best match for you. So for some folks, Howard is too big, too many type A people, you know, you might need something a little bit smaller, and there's
Right.
nothing wrong with that. You find the one that supports your studies, it supports your own development as a person, and by all means, try to attend and then go to the other institutions later on if that's what you feel you need, maybe your master's degree, a doctoral degree. But for undergraduate studies, I strongly recommend that young Black people go to HBCUs.
Yes, yes, indeed. Powerful words, although I didn't go to HBCUs, I desperately applied to Morehouse. I got in Howard. I got in. I didn't have the money, and they were, and I was so disappointed. But yes, I agree with you, Dr. Warren. We have to, as a foundational experience, if you got a strong foundation, let's say it's an undergrad in a Black college, or let's say middle school Black teachers, then if you go off to other sort of configurations, then it's different. But you have that strong foundation, so I would definitely agree with that.
And
Now,
brother, I just want to say, uh, who write about a little about this, Nathan and Julian Hare, the husband and wife, Black psychologists. They have some articles. It's in one of their books that they speak about the fact that we should send our children to institutions, Black institutions, and we should, as much as possible, not send them to PWIs, especially when they're very young. And if you decide to do that, you must counter that with them being in organizations that are African centered, because developmentally, sometimes the damage that's done when we're young, in terms of our cultural identity, our self esteem, sometimes is irreparable. So
that's
there's some
right.
research out there on it.
That's right. Joanne's Kunjufu, rest in power. Actually, the Hares both are deceased now. Rest in power to them too. Yeah, they wrote extensively on that. That's absolutely right. Now, those of you watching, some of you have children, you got them in school, and you meet the principal, and you have principals meetings, and yada yada yada. And you may think that you understand all that a principal does, right? And I'm hoping, Ms. Warren, that you can help people really understand all the different roles, the hats you wear, the people you impact and interface with by describing what's a typical day at work like for you. Let's say from the time you get in to the time you go home.
So what I would begin with is understanding that being a principal means you're a servant of the people, and your life does not belong to you in many, many ways. So I begin my day. I'm the first one in, and I actually open the school. So our school has metal detectors, and I'm at the metal detectors usually by about 6:45 each morning, and we let the students in at 7 o'clock. So while I'm there, I'm speaking to student. I greet every child by name. I'm looking at their faces to see if anybody's upset, if anybody was crying, if anybody's angry. I'm looking at their clothing. I'm seeing if they have on socks. Do they have on a uniform? Is anything tattered or worn? I'm looking to see, just their overall emotional well-being. Where are they as they enter the building? Is there anything that I need to address on a very personal level? Many times when children come in, you can tell that they had a bad morning or a bad night. So before they start to have a whole bad day, let's talk about it. Hey, what's going on? You look upset, uh, um, it looks like you were crying, or wait a minute, what's going on with your sweatpants? They got a hole. How that happen? And okay, let's go upstairs. Let's get some clothing for you to put on. Things of that nature. So I'm looking at the overall sense, the overall state of the children. Sometimes you have parents coming in the morning. Sometimes they're escorting the children. You have parents that just want to see the children go all the way into the cafeteria. Sometimes they might need to ask you questions. Sometimes you're engaging in a very long conversation about something you didn't anticipate, because a lot of this work is reactionary. And no matter how much you prepare, I'm prepared every day. I have my list of what I'm going to do, what I'm very task oriented. These are the things that I'm going to get done today. And if I have a list of 10, maybe 2 of them got done during the school day. The rest of the stuff has to get done later on in the evening when I come home or something like that. But that's the way we begin. We begin with morning announcements, acknowledging children for wonderful things, acknowledging our teams for winning. Children might have won. I just had a child who was placed in an art exhibition. So we're giving quote unquote shout outs to children for different things. And then we go upstairs and begin our day. And the day consists a lot of, you know, um, anchoring ourselves in instruction, making sure we're teaching what's supposed to be taught, making sure folks are not deviating too much from what it is that the children need. But it also is responding to crises at hand. Um, you know, our children have challenges, especially along the social emotional lines. So you can spend a significant amount of the day addressing those kinds of things as they arise. And many times, not only the children have social emotional challenges, so do their parents. So sometimes you're counseling the child, but in counseling the child, you also must reach out to the parent and counsel the parent, because the parent is in crisis and is going through extreme trauma as well. So a lot of the day is spent towards wellness and helping the children to center themselves and helping them to tap into their coping mechanisms and strategies. And then, the day also, you have to be responsive to the teachers, because the teachers have questions, they have things they want to, you know, just, hey, I have an idea. So I have an open door policy. I don't make people make appointments. If you have to make an appointment with me, that means something really, really serious is going down. So open door means open door. Anybody can come in my office at any time. It's really like a community center. No one ever thinks that it's the principal's office. It doesn't even look like one. It looks like a community center. There's clothing, we got food, we got snacks, we have school supplies, all kinds of stuff in there, because like I said, you're tending to all aspects of children and adults. So it has to look like a community center. It can't be a sterile place, because people have different needs throughout the day. So and, it can be very daunting at times, because it's, when I say busy, I mean busy, meaning that, running down the hallway, I got to run to go to the restroom, because it'll be 3 o'clock and I'm like, okay, I didn't go to the restroom. Eating becomes a problem, not eating regularly scheduled meals, especially when you have, conditions where you have to eat. So, those kinds of things, you kind of, it's a profession where sometimes, you take care of folks, but you don't take care of yourself. And I'm really bad at that. I must admit it. I'm trying to get better, but the day is a constant response to people and their needs. And, for me, it's not something that is bad, because that's the kind of person I am. I am a service oriented person, and I lean into that every day of the week. Clerical stuff, deadlines and stuff, that's the work that gets done, when everybody leaves. I'm not going to prioritize that during the day, because it's just not what is important at that time.
Understood. Now I want to skip this question. I want to ask you, now you talked about some of the challenges. We've heard about the challenges with public education, New York City, big urban areas. With all of the challenges, Ms. Warren, that come with being a public school teacher and a principal in New York City, especially right now, why did you choose education as your career path? A lot of people ask educators this all the time. Why did you do that? You don't get paid. They go through all this whole litany of bad things. Why? What motivated you? Because you could have done it. You're well educated. You could have done a number of things. Why education?
So this was not my plan. my plan was to go to law school. I said I was a political science major, and I thought that I was going to be a lawyer. And then when I graduated undergrad, I came back to New York, and I just wasn't clear on what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to be a criminal lawyer. And then what happened was at that time, the organization that I was in, we were working in Harlem, and we were working with young people, and we had a Saturday school, we had a breakfast and a lunch program, we took the children on trips, and we were doing education, and but it wasn't through the Department of Education or anything like that. And then the thought of becoming a criminal lawyer was not settling with me, because in that, especially if you go through the public defender's office, sometimes you're assigned as a prosecutor, sometimes you're assigned as a defense attorney. And I thought about it and was like, I cannot tell people to take plea bargains when they might be, innocent. And then when you looked at the disproportionality of, young black men being incarcerated, that just didn't sit well with me. And I didn't want to be like a corporate lawyer or anything like that. So I was like, nah, I don't think this is it. So I started to think, well, what else can I do that I'm really good at? And I was like, why wouldn't I be a teacher? Have been teaching my whole life. I was one of those children that played teacher at home. I had the fake homework assignments. I would check them, and my neighbor's kids, my little brother, they would be the students in the class. Sometimes it would be the doll babies. So, and then I've always, I've always been in that kind of what we call like a other mothering role. You're not a mother, but you do that work of mothers. I have done that, ever since I was a kid. And then, when I was at Howard, I was tutoring, and I was working with young people. In addition to all the other stuff I was doing, I get back to New York. I'm working with young people, running a Saturday school, and I was like, this is so natural to me. I like children, and I've been doing this work anyway. So that's what made me lean into becoming an educator. Um, and I have no regrets about it. If I had to do it all over again, I would do the same path, and I would be in a community just like the one I'm in. Some of us want to run away from our children. We want very cushy educated jobs. We want to be with children who, quote unquote, are not less as challenged, but that's not the path that I chose, and I would never choose that path, because our children need us. So that's why I chose it. I mean, and I don't know when I'm gonna leave. I could have retired like last year, 2 years ago almost, but I'm not ready yet, because my cup is. I don't feel that my cup is overflowing yet. But once I feel that the cup is overflowing, or I have nothing else to give, and the tank is empty, then I know that's my time to exit.
I hear that. I hear that. Yes. Now, much has been said. Carter G. Woodson wrote a whole book on it about the miseducation of Black people. And some people, like myself, would suggest that African-centered schools are part of the answer, but some people say they are the answer. Take all your kids out to public schools, put them all in African-centered schools or home schools. That's the answer. I'm curious to know, what are your thoughts on that, Ms. Warren?
Okay, so my children went to an independent Black school from the time they were two. Their birthdays are very late in the year. So they started school when they were two, and they graduated from out that school in the eighth grade. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. Shout out to Sister Lois and the Learning Tree, because I couldn't have asked for a better African centered education for my students, for my children rather. And I'm talking about in the arts. My children were planting, they would grow herbs and then make soaps and candles out the herbs. They learned how to sew. They put on these wonderful shows, and they got a good education. And, I have no regrets about that. So I do support African centered schools. And it's a school, I recommend many times that I recommend these schools to folks. But I don't believe that they are the sole answer, because what sometimes, not sometimes, when you go to African Center School, eventually you will have to matriculate out of them, because there are very few of them nationally, and many of them don't go through high school. So our children will have to go into a traditional school at one time, and they will have to work with other people. They will have to communicate with other folks who are not African centered. So we have to kind of walk this, what I would say, a balance of having an African centered education, but also preparing our children to work with people who do not look like them. And that's just the reality of the situation. But I do believe that centering our children is really, really important. And not just African Americans. I'm talking about Black people from the diaspora, because my school has a lot of, the Bronx in general has a lot of Black people from all over the world. Certain sections are filled with people from the Caribbean, other sections are filled with people from West African countries. And what I find in my experience is that there's a gap of learning amongst all Black people, regardless of where they come. And because of those gaps, we have divisions amongst us. We have people who believe that, honestly, that African Americans, that we're lazy and shiftless, we don't want to work, even though everybody benefits from our successes, from our struggles. Everybody benefits from our work and our tenacity, but we don't get credit for it a lot. And because of the narratives that are being pushed. Many people subscribe to the myth of the model minority, which many, Black people who are not African Americans also believe in. They believe in meritocracy. I worked hard, and that's why I was able to go to this school and I got a full scholarship. And many times don't acknowledge structural racism. I have been in rooms of educators who have said, I did not experience racism until, like, Black people, who I did not experience racism until I came to the United States. And I said, of course you experienced racism before you came to the United States. Your people don't own the land that they live on. Just because you saw Black people every day, that doesn't mean the racism wasn't there. If we're
That's
living
right.
in poverty, if you don't own the land and the resources, you control nothing, that is a form of racism. Racism is not always just, the what they deem as, what we would deem as just, um, white people denying us, or society denying us access to this, access to that. So, there's what I would call like an invisibility with it. And
Mhm.
so I think that African centered education would address all of that. You understand we have a common ancestry. And because of these things, this is why we are where we are in terms of the diaspora. And this is why we have the experiences that we have. But it is a collective experience wherever you are, whether you're in a Black person in a European country, an African country, South American, Central America, right here, or whether or not you're in Asia, it is a collective experience. And I believe, the quicker that we embrace that, the better off that we will be, and that we will not let the divisions, hinder our growth and our understanding of why we are in the situations we are. It's not because we just put ourselves in these situations. People like to separate us from the context of our experiences, and sometimes we don't do a good job of countering that narrative. We let people separate us from our lived experiences, and then allow them to blame us for the conditions we're in. So I do believe that an African centered education will address some of those divisions that we have. Also, it will also uh, um, enrich our understanding that our history does not begin with slavery. There was life before slavery, and what was life like, and what was going on. And because that's a big part of the narrative that is missing. For a lot of us, we think our story begins with enslavement, and that's so not the truth. And just even when you look at our Latino community, them understanding also where they fit into this puzzle, understanding who was in the Caribbean before the Europeans came, and how there came to be a Dominican Republic or a Puerto Rico or a Haiti. It's not that, it's not an ethnic origin story, because that's what many times people cling to.
Hmm.
This is the ethnicity. No, 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 no. We have to broaden our understanding of that by understanding historically where we were, what happened to us, what are our commonalities, because we have more in common than we have different. And if we build upon those commonalities, collectively we can do better.
That's right. That's right. Very well said, Dr. Warren. Now, you have recently completed your doctorate degree. Congratulations to you. Um, and you become Dr. Sheri Warren. Curious to know, what did you study specifically, and what were some of your findings?
So my studied the intersectionality between race, ethnicity, gender, and religion among 1.5 and second generation West African Muslim females, roughly between the ages of 18 and 21. And for the audience, the difference between a 1.5 and a second generation immigrant is a 1.5 uh, generation immigrant is a person who immigrated um, before the age of 12. And second generation means that either one or both of a person's parents were born in another country.
Mm.
The reason I chose that topic is, as I mentioned, the Bronx is has a very high population of West Africans, and specifically West African Muslim people. It has the second highest population in the United States behind Harrison County, Texas. And the reason I selected this topic as uh, my study was because several years ago, we noticed that there was a shift in our West African population, our female students. Um, we were used to a very compliant population of students, very docile. And, they were, children that went home and studied, they followed the rules, things of that nature. And then we noticed a shift. The young ladies were more vocal, they were fighting a lot, arguing a lot, doing things that were definitely counter religious and cultural norms. And it got to the point that we had disproportionality in our suspensions at the school. Many times, when you look at suspension history, it's always Black boys and Black boys with disabilities who are getting suspended more than everyone else. And at our school, it was not that. It was West African Muslim girls. And
Mm.
when I saw that, I was like, what is going on? So I created an informal advisory group, and I met with the young ladies, and they started to tell me their stories and parts of their experiences that were like, wow, I had no idea this stuff was going on. And so I engaged in a pilot study for my district and shared what, my findings were with the small group of young ladies. And then after that, I promised them that I would write a book about them. So what happened was I was working with a man, shout out to Dr. Eddie Fergus, and I was like, Dr. Fergus, somebody has to do this work with the West African girls. I don't know what's going on. And he told me, he said, Sheri, nobody's going to do this work. You got to do it. What you waiting for?
That's right.
And God bless him, because he said that, and then I was off and running. I re-enrolled in school and got to writing. And it's a very unique topic. West African Muslim females are almost non-existent in any literature. When
Mm.
you look at literature on Muslim young women, it's usually Arab Muslim or South Asian Muslim. Very rarely will you find anything on West African Muslim females, and their identity development um, is is something that, is worthy to be studied, because one thing that happens with them is that people look at them as a monolithic group. I did myself, yeah, they're all gonna listen, they're all gonna behave, they're not struggling with the things that other adolescents struggle with, and that's so not true. So in terms of my findings, I found that they many times feel invisible, they feel isolated, that they express that they are other mothers. And other mothering means, it's a term that is common, and it's not common, but the practice is common. The term is not common, but other mothering is a practice in the Black community where we help raise children, regardless of whether or not they are biologically related to you. There's usually a Black woman somewhere in everybody's life, and you have many multiple interactions with this symbolic figure who helps people, you know, babysitting, watching out for the children, making sure folks have people to eat, food to eat, giving guidance to young moms. Other mothering happens is something that we can trace back to the motherland, and it's something that we've always done. And so one of my findings was that the other mothering was taking a toll on them, and also adultification, which is the process, something that the term came out of a study called Girlhood Interrupted out of Georgetown University, where they did a study and they compared Black girls to mostly African Americans, but they compared them to their Caucasian counterparts, and found that that Black girls were adultified, meaning that people perceive them and treat them as adults, even when they're children. So the adultification comes in the forms of, like, taking care of the household, taking care of other children. It comes in the form of people looking at you in a very projecting, sexual attributes to you. Oh, you so grown, and you so sassy, and you fast, those kinds of things.
Mhm.
So what another thing that they spoke about was adultification, but without the sexualization, more so with uh, uh, domestic responsibilities in the house. Like, say, for example, you might be a college student, but you must cook dinner, you must help all of your siblings with their homework, you might be watching, have childcare responsibilities, not only with your siblings, but with your cousins, or nieces and nephews. And then at the end of the evening, that's when you might have time to do your college coursework and things like that. So the adultification, the feeling invisible, and feeling isolated were the most prevalent themes that were lifted out of my study.
Mm. That sounds very interesting.
Oh, and one more thing, and just
Yes.
also the other thing was that mental health. One other finding was that the young ladies do experience challenges with mental health, even though that's greatly frowned upon, like to go get resources. So a lot of them relied on what the quote is from one of the participants, using the Quran as a mental health guide to guide them through the adversity that they were experiencing. And it was very heart wrenching, and it was very beautiful study. I loved the work, but heart wrenching, because as an African American woman, I understand what it's like to be a Black woman in America, and I know what it's like to be, to have to deal with the racism and the sexism and the patriarchy. But I don't know what it's like to then have to have these intersectional identities of religion placed on it, and of your immigrant status. So the xenophobia in this country against Muslim people. I've had participants tell me things like, they've been called terrorists. People have tried to pull their hijabs off. So sometimes they don't go outside, and they won't wear their hijab, or they won't wear an abaya, or a niqab, because they just get so tired of being discriminated against. Or
Mm.
you go to a public school, and the school is trying to force you to take Christmas gifts. And when you understand that I can't take no Christmas gift home to my
Right.
house, but folks not recognizing, you know, uh that they have a right to express their religion. So the dealing with the intersectionality of these multiple identities and navigating them many times by yourself because of cultural and religious norms. So the isolation and the invisibility was prevalent in school settings, and sometimes even in their own communities.
Wow. That's something. That sounds like you got a book, a TED Talks, a bunch of stuff should be
I
coming from
know,
that.
I know. I'm trying to get on it this summer with all of that.
Oh yeah, I definitely see a lot of good coming from that, and hopefully you'll have an opportunity, Dr. Warren, to talk to some of these school district leaders and other principals and teachers about this dynamic.
Yes.
Now, yes, you've been committed to adolescent development your entire adult life, and probably even as an undergrad, as you had said. I'm curious to know that you're a mother yourself, and I'm curious to know how you, being a mother yourself, has informed your approach to our students.
So I tell everybody at the school, all the children know this. I want you to have the same experiences and opportunities that my children have. So when I come to work, y'all not somebody else's children, y'all my children. And the same things I want for my children is the same thing I want for y'all. And it's just that simple. So my children have to have clothing, y'all gonna have clothing. My children gotta have food, y'all gonna have food. My children travel, y'all gonna travel too. I take my children all over this country. I've taken them outside of the country to Canada a couple of times. I'm a firm believer in children traveling and learning about the world and where they're situated contextually, geopolitically, just plain geographically, and learning about different places, different people, how those places developed, how the people developed. I'm a firm believer in all of that. I'm a firm believer in student advocacy. Is one of the reasons why I have an open door policy, so that they can come in my office and say, Dr. Warren, such and such happened, and I feel like such and such, and I don't think this was right. Or I have an idea. Can we do such and such and such and such? So being an advocate, is a student advocate, is important, because many times we tell children that that they don't have a voice. So if I don't have a voice as I'm growing up, when am I going to get in a voice as an adult? I will be a person that walks around being compliant and putting up with nonsense and not standing up for myself ever, because nobody ever gave me permission to say what I
That's right.
felt and that it had merit. So I so those practices I bring into the school. And I'm very unapologetic. There are rules. Don't touch the kids. I touch kids. Yes, I give kids hugs. Yes, children need to feel that sometimes, especially when they're going through stuff. I'm going to tell children they're beautiful and they're handsome and your hair looks pretty, and girl, where you got those sneakers from? Those things are important. Because sometimes our children can go through um their life and nobody ever told them I love you. That's not far-fetched. Or you can go through your household and nobody says you're beautiful or you're handsome or you're smart. So those things are important, and those are things that I want the children to understand in my school. And those are things that my children have experienced and I want them to experience as well. And that's in addition to getting a good education.
That's right. That's right. And all of that is part of, I guess, as we would see it, Dr. Warren, all of that is part of getting a good education. Everything you just mentioned is part of that.
And also,
So
I just want to add on, and all this anti-DEI nonsense. Yeah, we do all the DEI work in our school, and we are unapologetic about it. Our ceremonies are all uplifting and very cultural, very culturally responsive, and we embrace that regardless of what's going on in the rest of this country right now.
that's what's up. That's what's up. Now, there's going to be a lot of people, especially when this is over and it's recorded on our YouTube channel. A lot of people Ms. Warren, we might have close to 6,000 subscribers, but the metrics show us that anywhere from 20 to 100,000 people come through this channel every week. They
Oh,
just
that's
don't
beautiful.
subscribe.
I'm proud of you. That's beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Yes, me and the Queen, thank you, and all the people that support us. So I'm hoping a lot of people will see this and will be informed by a lot of what you're saying. Curious to know. Somebody's going to say, oh, there was a principal in there. She was kicking it. She seemed cool. She seemed kind of pro-Black. You know what I'm saying? She had flavor. What is our advice to community leaders, activists, the parents who are saying, we want to make sure our kids, our youth are empowered, critical thinkers, comfortable in the skin they in, all these things we associate with being empowered. What are some general things you would say to such
So
people?
I would say the first thing is invest in our children. And I don't mean financial investment. A lot of times our folks are quick to talk about the kids ain't no good. You know, that's it. These young people ain't no good. The pants are sagging, da, 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 da. So, and some of that might have some merit. I'm not going to say it doesn't. But what you going to do about it? Because at the end of the day, children didn't ask to be born. People made conscious decisions to bring them into this world. So we have to do right by them. So invest in our children. One thing that I don't know if I will have the time to work on, but one thing that I know that is desperately needed are community centers. Where are the community centers? When I was a child, there were community centers in every community. In every
Everywhere.
project, there was a community center.
That's right.
And then you would go there. They had the bowling leagues, they had the baseball leagues, they had pool, they had football. Many of us learned how to play spades in these places. They had the dance troops. They were hubs. And those things have been taken away from the children. So where are they now? On the block, outside. So one thing I would strongly recommend, join your community councils, your local community councils with your council people, with your assembly people, and with your borough president, and demand that there be a robust community center in every community in your borough. In the Bronx, we need one in Highbridge. We need to make sure we one have in University Heights, another one in Claremont, another one in Soundview. Now, some of these folks have them, some of these places have them, but most don't. Every community needs a robust community center where children can have access to the sports, to the arts, to social justice programs. This is where you become a member of a debate team. This is where if have environmental activities where the children can plant community gardens and things of that nature. Invest in the children, because just complaining about it that's not it. That's not enough. What are we doing? What kind of opportunities are there? My son is is studying this right now, something we talk about, that the children don't have spaces. So just like you have a food desert, you have education deserts, we also have just overall deserts for our children in terms of their social interactions and sports and the arts and other things of that nature. And then I would recommend find a way to work with children, through organizations or through schools. When De Blasio was the mayor of New York City, one thing he did was he put CBOs into the schools. And so the funding for a lot of this stuff is being funneled to CBOs. But no disrespect, the CBOs many times don't have the capacity to render the robust services that I'm talking about. So, I would say engage with the youth. Don't be afraid of them. Don't be afraid of the youth. Talk to them and then advocate for them, because many of them, they're not at the place where they know how to advocate for themselves. They know what they want, but they don't know how to maneuver systems. And the adults know how to maneuver the systems. And we need to lift this up to all the folks that have access to money and say, hey, we don't have a community center and that lifts up the arts and sports and these things. What do we need to do to build one in our community?
That's right. That's right. I have nothing to add to that. We're coming towards the end, Dr. Warren. I want to put a reminder to anyone watching, if there's any questions, please type them up so I can share them with Dr. Warren. I do see my Queen Bee over here says, where do we access the findings of the study that you were referring to? I think about the adultification of our sisters. Where can she learn more about that?
She can go right to Google Scholar and type in my name, Dr. Sheri Warren, and it'll be the second study that pops up. And
All
it's
right.
also in ProQuest, PROQUEST. If you go to ProQuest, the study is there. But most folks are, Google is so popular. So, but it's in Google Scholar, and you don't have to pay. Regardless of which way you access it, you don't have to pay. It's free to the public.
Excellent.
And the topic is a qualitative study on the intersectionality of race and gender, ethnicity, gender, religion among 1.5 and second generation West African Muslim females.
Yes. And if you don't remember that, you can go to Google Scholar and type in Dr. Sheri Warren. Her name is right up here, right? Is that right, Ms. Warren?
Yep, that's it.
Okay. All right, excellent. Are there any other questions? Because I have a question with which we're going to end the interview. But before I go there, I want to open it up for the community. Are there any other questions? I have a question. Let me ask you this, Ms. Warren. Anyone who's been in a leadership position, and especially a leader of a lot of people in an organization, they get flack. Oh, they too strict. Oh, I don't like the way they mean. Oh, they're too serious. How do you respond to this idea of what it takes? What do you think are the qualities that would make a strong principal, a good principal?
I think one of the first qualities you have to understand is that you are a servant. And once you embrace that, it makes things easier. I've always been like that. So it wasn't something that I had to make an adjustment. But doing this work is a life of love and it's a life of service. And if you value your personal time and you're about you, then this is not the field to go into. So understand that it is it's a life of service, and yet you are on deck 24/7, 365. You will get a call at 9 and 10 o'clock at night, and a child telling you that they're hungry, and you're gonna have to get them some food, or they might be, we just got put out our house. Um, you know, um, I had a breakdown and I'm on my way to the psychiatric unit. This is middle school for me. And these are all real things that have happened. And understanding that there will be many days where you will have to get up out your bed or leave an engagement. It's well after your work hours. But for the love of children and for the safety of children, you understand that duty has called you. And hopefully that you can rise to that. And if you cannot fathom doing that kind of work, then don't step in the pond. Don't do it, because that's what it really, really calls. And then you have to understand that regardless of what you do, you will never make everybody happy. You're not. Somebody is always going to be beefing. So just understand that that's what it is. And you got to keep going. As long as you know that you're trying to do more good than harm, and that if you do harm, it's not intentional, and you make amends and rectify it immediately. Because I'm not going to be the one to tell you that I did everything correct. No, I have made many mistakes, but did I apologize and did I try to make it right? That's the more important thing. And if you don't have the ability to tell a parent in their face, I am sorry that this happened, even if you weren't the one who did it, I apologize. That should not have happened. You were right. And this is how we're going to try to rectify it. Or how you taught me this, Mr. I wasn't going to call you Mr. T, but you taught me this, Aj. How would you like this to be resolved? That's a key question. So if we're not willing to humble ourselves and understand that regardless of poverty, regardless of, mental health challenges, regardless of those things, that our children need love, they're deserving of love, and we should do the best to give it to them. And no matter how hard it may be, you can put your head to pillow at night with a clean conscience. So that's what I would say. Those you have to be strong. You can't be sensitive and folding over because somebody said something to you. Now I hate the principal. Listen, there are gonna be 20 people that hate you every day, but
At least.
right, but over
That's right. That's right.
journey, there will be thousands that say they love you. I can't.
That's
I'm gonna
right.
be honest. I can't walk. My kids hate to go places with me. My children do not like to walk the streets with me. Why? Because it takes us forever to get where we're going, because we are going to get stopped. 125th, Fordham Road, it doesn't matter. People are going to stop us and going to give them all kinds of anecdotes about something that happened when they were with me as a student. And my first set of students, they're in their mid 40s now. I wasn't much older than them when I started teaching. And so, always understand that people, and you can't make everybody happy, but as long you're doing right by the children and their families, it's okay.
Yeah, I would definitely co-sign everything you said. I remember times when we had a dance, and the dance was supposed to have been over at 10, or
That's right.
and we were there till midnight waiting for some people to come get their kids. Yeah, so that's real talk right there. That's real talk. Real talk. Now, the last question I have for you, Miss Warren, is you're doing all this work. You're getting up early. You're commuting to work, commuting back. You're staying way after dismissal. You know what I'm saying? What is something is driving you? There has to be something more than just I like the job. What is the legacy that you wish to leave in the world? Or another way, what impact do you wish to have through your service to our community?
um a couple of things. I want children to know that when they were in our school, that they were loved, and that when they go to other institutions that say that they care about them and they do this for them, they have a yardstick to which to measure that by. And they can clearly say, nah, y'all do love us, or no, y'all don't love us. And then present their evidence as to why or why not. Because there are a lot of institutions that will say they're here for children, and they're not. They might be there to get federal monies, they might be there to meet a quota, whatever the case may be, but are you really there for the children? If you go to a school, if they children go to school where there are no resources for the children, if a child needs toiletries, nobody in school can get the child on toiletries. You're gonna let a child not have deodorant? You're gonna let a child come with a hole in their sneakers? You know how old school used to say your shoes is talking? You're gonna let your children come to school with their shoes talking, and y'all don't buy them no shoes? Y'all don't go get them coats? If they come and say we don't have any food in our house, nobody's gonna go to the supermarket and get them some groceries to help them go through the next week or whatever the case may be. So, I want the children to understand that they are loved and understand that love is demonstrative. You understand? Yeah, the school might say they love you and they do this, but are they really doing it? And then I also, in terms of legacy, you know, hoping that the children understand that their voice matters, and don't let people treat you any kind of way. And just because they're grown folks doesn't mean that grown folks always do it right. And there's a respectful way to engage the adults to say, hey, what about this policy right here? Can we do this? And it'd be a safe space for them to bring ideas to the table. So that's another thing. And one thing also I have to say this, just learning, reading, and learning to learn. We just had a book fair at our school. We hadn't had it for a couple of years. And what we're learning is the children have no stamina for reading anymore. They used to read in the text on the memes and stuff. So, hopefully, we plant the seeds, a love for reading and a love for learning, because we understand that those things take you far. They take you far, and you should be reading and learning outside of school, and to fact check the things that you learn in school. Just because the teacher told it to you, that does not mean it's correct. I tell my children all the time, if you don't believe me, look it up. Look it up, and then I'll give them places. These are some credible sources you can go to. You have a right to challenge the principal. You have a right to say, I don't know if that's true. Just don't sit there and believe it because I told it to you.
That's
Absolutely
right.
not. Do your own research. So, just advocacy in terms of their voices, but also advocacy in terms of what they're learning and how they're learning it.
Excellent, excellent. Well, as we close, Dr. Warren, I just want to reiterate to you the purpose of this particular series and why we thought of you. And it's because of all the decades of work, demonstrative, seeing that you didn't play, you were no nonsense when it came to the babies. You did not play. And anyone that knows you was
Yep, and I'm still like that.
they know that you're not playing the nonsense. If you're where you're supposed to be as an adult staff member or teacher doing what you're supposed to do, they'll have no problem, Miss Warren. But if they not, and if they slacking, they're gonna have problems with Miss Warren. And some people don't understand that. Like when you love people, you're gonna give them the best you got, man. And that's just what it is. Anybody that lets you float by and says they love you, they got a real weird
way of showing it. That's
right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And I stand 10 toes down on that. I stand on business with that.
Yeah.
That's real talk. That's real talk. Like, yes, that's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah. So that I can bear witness, those of you watching, that I have seen that for sure. Doesn't play that coming in late, half done, half baked ideas, half done lessons, and no, that's not happening. You're gonna get checked on that until you get that right, or you're gonna find another place to work. That's how that works, and I think that's the way it should be, because even though it's not us sitting down saying I love you, I love you, I love you, when kids see that, they see that you don't tolerate foolishness, you don't let them get away with subpar work. To them, that reads, that says I love you. That's what it says to them, right? So we just want to tell you that we honor that in you and your stewardship of the community. You're pouring love into the community, not only your biological children, but also the community children. And we honor that. We see it and we recognize it and we respect it. If I had money to give all our honorees, I'd give all a few million.
And I would give all of mine to my school. I wouldn't even keep it.
Right. I don't as of yet. Just give me a few weeks. But we just want to make sure that the sisters know that. I think we'll have maybe 2 or 3 more sisters on, but we definitely respect the work you've done, Ms. Warren. Definitely. I just want to see. Oh my God, the Queen. The Queen is just in love with you. She's a Libra too,
Oh yes.
She's talking about this a Libra thing. And
yes, that's right. Everybody knows.
So yeah. So she's been feeling a lot of what she said. And she says here, thank you for loving our babies so much that you provide an outstanding education and proper care.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So, and we're gonna stay in touch, Ms. Warren. Now,
Yes.
when you do retire, we definitely need to build.
Oh,
we need to build because there's work we can do educationally.
I agree.
And activist wise too.
Yes.
But so long as you the board of ed, we're gonna keep it, vague.
I just want to clarify what's happening now. I'm definitely using the summer to reset. And I will be diligently working on 3 separate projects over the summer.
Wow.
Because the work with the dissertation was important to me, and I just don't want to let it sit. I'm working on that. I'm also working on an autobiography, and then one of my close friends, we were just talking. I had gotten a big grant for my school, and we dedicated the lab in our school to a botanist who taught at Howard, went to Howard, but she was the first woman to get a PhD from Fordham University, first Black woman and first woman, period. Mm-hmm. And we were just having a conversation about what I did to secure the funding and how I get funding in so many other areas for the school. And she recommended that, you should write a book about this. And I was like, I already got like 2 things on the on the table
Sound
right
like
now.
me. Yeah,
But then
I got a million things. Yeah.
right, we spoke about possibly co-writing a book. So I'm not even going to wait till I'm retired. That's the work to begin to start
Good.
work over the summer. So we'll touch
Excellent.
base very soon.
Absolutely, Miss Warren. Keep on pushing, my sister. You got our full love and support here at Harlem Liberation School. And give my regards to all the people, the staff, the students at the school where you work. And we will be in touch. And thank you for sharing your time and your wisdom and your work with us.
And thank you for inviting me. Thank you for your audience, for listening. And oh, you know what? Can I give my like if anybody want to send me an email? Can I give my email
Sure,
address?
absolutely.
It's SHERIWARREN 215 at Gmail.
Okay. All righty.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
So again, thank you so much. I look forward to talking to you soon, and keep up the good work.
Absolutely. Thank you. And you do the same, Miss Warren. You take care. Try to enjoy some of that summer. It's going to be real hot this summer.
Yes, I'm going to try.
All right.
Thank
Take
you.
care, my sister.
Good
Peace.
night. Bye-bye.